The time has come for America to hear the truth. I agree with Dante that the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who in a period of moral crisis maintain their neutrality. There comes a time when silence is betrayal. Our only hope today lies in our ability to recapture the revolutionary spirit. There are those who are seeking to equate dissent with disloyalty. It's a dark day in our nation when high-level authority will seek to use every method to silence dissent. Something is happening and people are not going to be silent. The truth must be told.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
Many people in today's world feel in their gut that something isn't quite right, but due to countless distractions, never seem to have the time to discover what is wrong. Over the last 70 years, our society has been dismantled, ripped apart, with the express intention to create a new social paradigm, and eventually, whether we understand this fully or not, a new species of humanity. None of us, the greater mass of the human race, have been asked about this evolutionary step. We've been coerced, educated and programmed to accept as inevitable the direction that we are taking as a species. We continue to spout the word progress as though it was an unassailable concept, yet the path that we are on is absolutely nihilistic and is only one of a myriad of directions that our species could have taken. We are told that we are travelling along a natural evolutionary path. But if we open even one eye and look, it becomes clear that there is nothing that we as a people are doing that is actually natural in any way whatsoever. Certain people will already be on board with what I've just said, but many others will be wondering about my sanity, so it's up to me to clarify things. The majority of the world's population are living in conditions akin to the story of the frog in a saucepan that's being slowly cooked. The frog doesn't realize what's happening until it's too late and he or she is cooked. The temperature of the water rose so slowly that the frog never even noticed. If the frog had have been a little more conscious, it would have realized the clearly inevitable conclusion to the heating up of its environment. The majority of people are just like the frog in the little parable, and are living in a state of cognitive dissonance, refusing to look past the flimsy borders of a constructed paradigm. There is one group of people though, a small but not insignificant percentage of the population, who have felt that things are wrong and have given some thought to what that something is. This group of truth seekers in general follow various gurus of the alternative world and feel that by gaining knowledge about the world situation, they are actively doing something to halt what appears to be a global agenda to enslave and possibly cull the population. Unfortunately, hardly any of these independent thinkers really reach the level of awareness that allows them to fully comprehend the big picture. This is, in part due possibly to their chosen gurus not fully understanding the entire picture themselves. The rabbit hole is deep and many-tiered. Many gurus still exist within the created paradigm, so cannot accept things that lie outside that paradigm, while a few are actually free thinkers that owe no allegiance to the paradigm, yet still may not understand all of the complexities of what they are seeing. This group of supposed critical thinkers range from the intellectually challenged to others such as Max Egan and David Icke, whose research dares follow the breadcrumbs down the rabbit hole. The alt media's followers cover the entire social and political spectrum. It is worth noting, though, that nearly every one of the alternative gurus do not promote solutions, except by default. They document every sick global event as it transpires, but veer away from advocating any real solutions. Maybe because any real solutions may upset their lives or the lives of their followers. I don't know. In looking for real solutions, we should discount the views of the majority, as most still believe that the system is actually real and so can't see any other worldview as it doesn't fit into the co-opted paradigm. We must also leave by the wayside many brilliant men and women who, although fighting for the light, still believe that solutions can be had within the paradigm. Now we are left with a relatively few true warrior gurus, but as of yet, these still have no idea that they are the leaders people look to for leadership and solutions. Alternately, these researchers don't want the mantle of leader thrust upon them. Without leaders, though, who are working on unifying and hopefully directing the myriad of alternative gurus and their followers, there is no fight to be had. We all lose to a handful of families that Max Egan would call the kakistocracy, or that David Icke would call bloodlines that are connected to some otherworld entities, or that I myself would call occult adepts that follow a 6 millennium old plan that can be encapsulated as God's work or the great work of the ages. If we are ever to rise like lions, we will first have to unite, and the more I watch the many diverse researchers entrench themselves into their own isolation, the more I wonder about the possibilities of halting the elite's agenda. There are a few problems that appear to be in the way of unification. One is ego. Every researcher believes that they and they alone know what is really happening. Yet we are dealing with an extremely complex system of manipulation. So how does anyone come to the conclusion that they know it all? Some researchers are content to remain in the paradigm that they perceive and become negatively judgmental about other points of view and other directions of research. I myself do not believe any researchers work completely, but see that they know pieces of the puzzle that I don't. Many researchers go as far as they intellectually can, but as long as they are opening people's eyes, why should others berate them? Without proof, one researcher will attack another, claiming some sort of collusion with the elites. If there's no proof available, then we are only hypothesizing and end up creating schisms that further alienate and separate us. Any unity that manifests can be knocked down through misinformation generated through hubris and ego, and that possibly emanates from the intelligence services and their counterintelligence propaganda, COINTELPRO. A Chinese whisper can do irreparable damage. It's time that we all get off our own private pedestals and stop looking for flaws in others. We all have flaws. Now's the time to promote the positive and to unite under some form of umbrella organisation so that we actually become a force to be reckoned with. We don't have to believe in anyone's research totally. I don't. But I do know who's on the side of freedom and who is a positive asset in the fight that we find ourselves in. And that is all that matters. There are a myriad of seemingly unconnected problems, both natural and manufactured, that have to be looked at and solved if we are to continue inhabiting this world, and if we are to remain human. The problems and the sheer amount of them may at first seem insurmountable, but if we remain calm and deal with them in a clear and concise manner, we will prevail. The first overarching problem that we need to look at and to have clarified is climate change, as its solution, care of the UN, is a blueprint and a step-by-step guide being used as a weapon to create a new society and a new level of tyranny. The propagandized view is that the use of fossil fuels have caused a massive overdose in the atmosphere of CO2, and that this overdose is causing global warming, etc., etc. We are told through most media and government agencies that the solution is to completely overhaul society's economic system, basing the new system on the use of energy, and that the good life is over for the masses, as the planet will not sustain humanity having that good life anymore. So if we the people are to accept a dystopian future that has us all controlled absolutely from the cradle to the grave, shouldn't we ask questions and see if institutions such as the media and government are telling the truth, as they have never in history cared about the concept of truth before? Truth is paramount, yet sadly lacking in today's world. We are now all living under a system that is, by Mussolini's own definition, a global fascist system. Fascism, according to Benito, was a marriage of government with the major corporations, all having the same overall objective. In fact, a simple analysis of governments around the world shows that governments are in fact corporations as well. Their job seemingly to legitimize the direction that an elite cadre wish to go, whilst halting any rebellion against those wishes. The corporate media has, over the last 70 years, become the de facto programmers of what the people think, and therefore have become the voice of the masses. Edward Bernays the father of modern-day propaganda, claimed that the mass media were in fact a shadow government that moulded the perspective of the world around us. We can suggest that due to the internet, that is not correct. But that is an incorrect assumption. Sure, there is a plethora of alternative sites that do not conform to the SNM's vision of the world, but with the clarion call of fake news and the help of the corporations that control the traffic of the web, all of these alternate sites will soon find themselves deleted and marginalized to the point where the MSM is the only voice left to hear. So back to the problem of climate change. We the people are either under the spell of the MSM or are being pushed to the fringes of society if we dare question the corporate narrative. The MSM claim, along with governments, that there is a consensus among scientists that an overabundance of man-made CO2 is the cause of climate change, and that calling for any further debate is tantamount to treason. This attitude in itself should be cause for any who still have active brain cells to wave red flags. The greater mass of the human race now stare vacantly at two-dimensional screens and at the manipulated data being fed them, while screaming contrived mantras that will leave us all enslaved.
Few things annoy me more than to hear people talking about carbon dioxide as being a pollutant. You're made of carbon dioxide. I'm made of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is how living things grow.
When people say we don't believe in global warming, I say, no, I believe in global warming. I don't believe that human CO2 is causing that warming.
A few years ago, if you would ask me, I would tell you it's CO2. Why? Because just like everyone else in the public, I listened to what the media had to say.
Each day, the news reports grow more fantastically apocalyptic. We are told that the Earth's climate is changing. But the Earth's climate is always changing.
There were periods, for example, in Earth's history when we had 3 times as much CO2 as we have today, or periods when we had 10 times as much CO2 as we have today. And if CO2 has a large effect on climate, then you should see it in the temperature reconstruction.
News reports frequently argue that even a mild increase in global temperature could lead to a catastrophic melting of the polar ice caps. But what does Earth's climate history tell us?
We happen to have temperature records of Greenland that go back thousands of years. Greenland has been much warmer. Just 1,000 years ago, Greenland was warmer than it is today, yet it didn't have a dramatic melting event.
Even if we talk about something like permafrost, a great deal of the permafrost, that icy layer under the forests of Russia, for example, 7,000 or 8,000 years ago melted far more than we're having any evidence about it melting now. So in other words, this is a historical pattern again, but the world didn't come to a crunching halt because of it.
If we look at climate through the geological time frame, we would never suspect CO2 as a major climate driver. If we go back 8,000 years in the Holocene period, our current interglacial, it was much warmer than it is today. Now the polar bears obviously survived that period. They're with us today. They are very adaptable, and these warm periods in the past, what we call hypsithermals, pose no problem for them.
None of the major climate changes in the last 1,000 years can be explained by CO2.
We can't say that CO2 will drive climate. It certainly never did in the past.
I've often heard it said that there is a consensus of thousands of scientists on the global warming issue and that humans are causing a catastrophic change to the climate system. Well, I am one scientist, and there are many that simply think that is not true.
This claim that the IPCC is the world's top 1,500 or 2,500 scientists, you look at the bibliographies of the people and it's simply not true.
See, I don't even like to call it the environmental movement anymore because really it is a political activist movement, and they have become hugely influential at a global level.
This is a story of censorship and intimidation.
I have seen and heard their spitting fury at anybody who might disagree with them, which is not the scientific way.
Professor Clark and others have indeed discovered, as Al Gore says, a link between carbon dioxide and temperature. But what Al Gore doesn't say is that the link is the wrong way round.
So here we're looking at the ice core record from Vostok, and in the red we see temperature going up from early time to later time at a very key interval when we came out of a glaciation. And we see the temperature going up, and then we see the CO2 coming up. CO2 lags behind that increase. It's got an 800-year lag. So temperature is leading CO2 by 800 years.
They said, if the CO2 increases in the atmosphere as a greenhouse gas, then the temperature will go up. But the ice core record shows exactly the opposite. So the fundamental assumption, the most fundamental assumption of the whole theory of climate change due to humans is shown to be wrong.
CO2 clearly cannot be causing temperature changes. It's a product of temperature. It's following temperature changes.
The ocean is the major reservoir into which carbon dioxide goes when it comes out of the atmosphere, or from which it is re-emitted to the atmosphere. If you heat the surface of the ocean, it tends to emit carbon dioxide. So similarly, if you cool the ocean surface, the ocean can dissolve more carbon dioxide.
So the warmer the oceans, the more carbon dioxide they produce, and the cooler they are, the more they suck in. But why is there a time lag of hundreds of years between a change in temperature and a change in the amount of carbon dioxide going into or out of the sea? The reason is that oceans are so big and so deep, they take literally hundreds of years to warm up and cool down. The theory of man-made global warming is now so firmly entrenched, the voices of opposition so effectively silenced, it seems invincible, untroubled by any contrary evidence, no matter how strong. The global warming alarm is now beyond reason.
In 1992, a white paper written by a roundtable group known as the Club of Rome, an elitist think tank that is responsible for spawning the EU, stated that in looking for a new enemy for the human race, overpopulation and the environment would fit the bill, as then the human race itself could be blamed. But let us look at these two crimes we are being convicted of. Strangely enough, one of the answers to rising populations may be to create a global society that has a high standard of living. Amongst the countries with better education and less poverty, populations have declined, unless of course these countries are flooded with migrants from war-torn or poverty-stricken countries. Instead of raising living standards and educational standards, the powers that rule have decided on policies that will effectively cull the population. Processed and genetically modified foods, vaccines, and radiation weaken our biology and our ability to fight disease, whilst, and in consequence, our brain functionality lowers to the point where primates begin to show a higher potential for critical thought. A digital Eden does not need useless eaters to function intelligently. It needs them to disappear. Eugenics did not disappear along with the Third Reich. It simply put on new clothes. As for climate change, only a person that is myopic believes that man-made CO2 is the problem. If the climate really is a danger to us in the near future, then we better hope that there is a God and that praying to him or her will alter the course of the cosmos. As the UN Agenda 2030 won't be solving any universally created problems. in the near future. As noted, pollution is a major provable problem, so let's halt the insane social construction that has corporations destroying our environment with impunity, and let us use the trillions of magic money units that are manifested into a virtual reality to create a society that does not pollute and that uses free and sustainable energy instead of using that magic to create ever more pollution along with war and our own enslavement. To reiterate a few facts that won't be debated by certain scientific bodies, governments, the NSM, and the countless programmed zombies that continue to scream the party line. No matter what has been brainwashed into the minds of the programmed masses over the last couple of decades, there has actually been no significant rise in global temperatures, while CO2 levels have continued to rise. From 10,000 to 1,000 years ago, there was less ice in the Arctic, while at the same time, levels of CO2 were noticeably lower. There is no empirical evidence being offered that proves that CO2 drives climate. Indeed, the relationship shows that climate drives CO2 levels. Oil companies check their websites, and governments love global warming hysteria because it enables them to profit from rising energy prices, carbon fixing, trading, and green taxes. The problem now is that daily brainwashing by media and experts on the green gravy train is so much past the tipping point that action from green zealots threatens our very freedom.
In your written testimony, you said that the science behind climate change and its effect on minority communities, quote, should not be up for debate. I'm curious, is the Sierra Club, is this a frequent practice to declare areas of science not up for debate, not up for consideration of what the evidence and data show?
If you are relying on the evidence and data, you know, the science, the preponderance of the evidence are there.
And there should be no debate?
Based upon the preponderance of the evidence, the science is settled.
How do you address the fact that in the last 18 years, the satellite data show no demonstrable warming whatsoever?
Sir, I would rely upon the Union of Concerned Scientists, and I would rely upon the evidence, and again, from our own NOAA officials, the data are there.
Open government is now sacrificed to the new green religion. We have to understand that our civilization has been created through the trickling down of the desires of a few that believe that they are godlike. For example, we are all drowning in a sea of plastic, not because it is the only and best material to carry shopping in, but it is a material that the petrol giants could use to dominate and monopolize the manufacture of product. Plastic is easy to mold and just as easy to break, thereby losing its functionality. It is ideal for the civilization that is fueled through a planned obsolescence of products. The CO2-driven climate change position taken by governments around the world is a conspiracy driven by the UN, the United Nazis, and its desire to create a dystopian future for the majority of the human race, while an elite few reap the benefits of an overabundant planet. So it really does look like the accepted consensus is a UN-inspired fraud that has been engineered to give the elite what they want, which is a planet on a plate, while an impoverished humanity struggles on in dystopian smart cities that control their every action. Welcome to our brave new world.
We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service us. Resistance is futile.
You are being programmed. We live in a world now where it is easy to confuse truth and popularity. Something bad could happen. Something bad could happen. Short-term dopamine-driven feedback loops that we have created are destroying how society works. If you feed the beast, that beast will destroy you.
Simply by pushing a button and turning a dial.
Jobs was like anti-social media. Something bad could happen.
God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains.
Something bad could happen.
God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains.
Something bad could happen.
God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains.
Something bad could happen.
I'm not on social media.
Talking about smart cities, we come to our next connected problem, which just so happens to be the real reason for the promotion of climate change and its solution, Agenda 2030. The solution to climate change that we are being offered as the only solution is a technocratic world. A technocratic world is one that functions with mathematical precision, and that precision can only be manifested through the advent of 5G, and screw the ramifications to the human race. While the UN Agenda 2030 moves forward like a steamroller on steroids, it needs an infrastructure that will connect all energy resources and allow absolute control of those energy resources. Me and you are included in that. The connectivity method being forced upon the world is 5G. Proponents of 5G describe it as a cloud of connectivity that follows you everywhere, allowing for everything from simple conveniences such as the seamless streaming of music to vastly more complicated and high-stakes ideas like smart cities and driverless cars, and of course a microchipped population. The system is a very powerful wireless network that will be so powerful that it will be able to host billions of appliances that will all be connected to the internet. Sure, it may well be true that you will be able to download a movie in seconds, or you may be able to be told by your fridge that you're nearly out of orange juice, or you may be able to open your front door by waving your hand at it. But let's get real. None of this crap matters. It's a case of boys and their toys. In reality, it is a system that will be so powerful that it will give the elite and the governments that they dominate full control over every resource in the planet, including us. How 5G is being sold to politicians, shareholders of corporations, and other commercial interests is simply by the waving of carrots. These sad and sick individuals salivate so strongly at the mere mention of money and power that they refuse to look at the harm that their actions do to others. Unfortunately, psychopaths and sociopaths are the kind of twisted people that we allow to dominate our society. Rationale, logic, and critical thought have all been tossed in the trash can in today's world of programmed narcissism. If we could stop taking selfies and raise our consciousness from needing dopamine hits that Facebook and the like provide, we would realize that there is something drastically wrong with the rollout of the 5G system. For example, a mind that was not already swimming in a sea of insanity would realize that the refusal of governments and corporations to test 5G for long-term adverse effects on humanity and indeed on all life is a sure sign that the ruling elites don't want the population to know just how dangerous the 5G system really is.
Everyone knows that government agencies are corrupt. It's common sense. It's clear that the system is broken and they're all crossing the line. Homeland Security, IRS, the USDA, the Treasury, the EPA, all of it BS. But rarely is it so blatant as it is with the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. Now they've opened up the floodgates to massive corporate control over our lives, a total surveillance system on the part of government agencies and their contractors, and the very near blanketing of the entire population.
Literally, of everyone in the world. Literally, of everyone in the world. Autonomous vehicles, smart city energy grids, transportation networks, and water systems. Immersive education and entertainment will come from the cloud. The driving force of the 21st century will be powerful processing, centralized in the cloud, and wirelessly connected to thin clients.
All of whom will be saturated with gigahertz signals literally everywhere they go on the planet, and no one has permission.
The United States will be the first country in the world to open up high-band spectrum for 5G networks and applications. And that's damn important, and will generate tens of billions of dollars in economic activity. Unlike some countries, we do not believe that we should spend the next couple of years studying what 5G should be or how it should operate. We won't wait for the standards. Unlike some countries, We do not believe that we should spend the next couple of years studying what 5G should be or how it should operate. We won't wait for the standards.
How many people have to die from brain cancer before the federal government puts warning labels on cell phones?
If something can be connected, it will be connected in the 5G world. Of hundreds of billions of microchips connected in products from pill bottles to plant waterers, you can be sure of only one thing. The biggest Internet of Things application has yet
Every
to be
single
imagined.
device and appliance in manufacture is being fitted with a two-way communication device, and it sends data back. Spying and surveillance is completely built in. It's a total default, and it's the given. Location tracking, health data, audio and visual recordings, text, and everything else is going to be continually collected. And Tom Wheeler of the FCC freely admits it. He thinks it's great. And by the 70s, they could put individuals or entire towns to sleep on command. They can aggravate people, they can alter their sexual preferences, they could delete their memories, they could turn on desire, they could turn on repulsion, and they could otherwise hijack someone's spontaneous and natural behavior. They could literally hijack your nervous system and your brain. And that was 30 or 40 years ago. Now things are very advanced, they're very precise, and they're very far along. There's discussions now at the Davos World Economic Forum that have broached the topic of mind reading and literal mind control. And these devices, the capability to do it is built into everything, every handheld unit, every laptop, mobile device that everyone's carrying around. And once things are fast enough with 5G, all bets are off.
Prior to 9/11, how many people thought they'd be subjected to unconstitutional searches and even molestation at the airport? How many people thought they'd be subjected to a radiation-emitting device simply to board an airplane? How many people thought they'd have to walk through a metal detector at a sporting event? More to the point, how many thought they'd have every aspect of their lives collected and stored in databases, from medical records to chat room conversations and personal email? Imagine a world where everybody thinks the same thoughts and has the same political opinions as his or her neighbor, all rubber-stamped and sanctified by the state. This is a statist wet dream.
Greed did not manifest the idea of 5G. Greed allows its implementation into the material world. It is at the highest level of our civilization that the green light to use 5G was born. It was seen as the answer to the problem of how to connect the sum total parts of all resources to a centralized digital matrix, thereby gaining control of every facet of existence on this planet. It is my belief that the ruling elite know that the human population, never mind all life, would be affected negatively, but the agenda that they follow will not allow anything to get in the way of its implementation. For 5G and the Internet of Things to do what is expected, the entire system must have a centralized mind, and that mind will be conscious. It will not be human, but it will have to be conscious, so it can make autonomous decisions, etc. The scientists at the forefront of creating this artificial intelligence all know that what they are being funded to create will in all probability signal the end of humanity. Once this artificial intelligence has been fully activated, it will be able to control and direct all of the billions of units that will be attached to it through the web. The humans that are attached to it through the insertion of microchips will within a short space of time lose all sense of individuality and independence. The unchipped will become third-class citizens of no more use to the system than mosquitoes are to us at the present. The unchipped will discover that they are expendable and will not be allowed into the brave new world. Pretty quickly, they will die out or be wiped out. The chipped will have lost any vestiges of compassion and creativity that they once had, and will simply become biobots doing odd jobs for the AI that for all intents and purposes will be a planetary god. The elite that have over the last 6,000 years engineered this entire journey will be given the carrot that they have always craved: immortality, or at least a bizarre version of it. The mapping of the conscious into a digital formula that will be able to be placed into new bodies or transhuman receptacles is what these fools believe is a worthy payment for their treachery against the planet and all the life that they have made extinct. It should be worth noting that if there ever was a spirit or a soul, it will be highly improbable that it will exist in a digital consciousness. There are countless more problems that we face, but at their core, they are connected to the two that we have already discussed. The one world order with the one aim, the one religion, the one thought, and the one sex are only a series of stepping stones towards singularity and the end of this root race of human beings. The media has done an amazing job reprogramming and preparing us to accept the bizarre world that we are entering. From Hollywood blockbusters to morning chat shows on TV, there is an ongoing drive to break down what we once thought of as human and natural. Normalization of transhuman bodies and acceptance of artificial intelligence to the destruction of the dualistic biological creatures that create their own offspring has practically been achieved. This shows the ultimate power of mass media. We have all succumbed to its enchantment and blindly, with our eyes wide open, dance at the end of time.